be like, my friend used to say, we used to talk about the gun issue in America, and we talk about how I was like, look, I don't really understand this like defense against the government gone tyrannical, but I get that like you're 5 hours from a police station, you want a gun.
Yeah.
It's your house. It's like, fair enough.
Yeah.
We don't even understand what that's like in Britain to be 4 hours from the nearest police station. It's like,
I think it's even more than that, but yeah.
But generally that's the argument that I was just like, well, fair enough. Now I see, and I'm like, holy shit, the government should be like stopped at all things. Like I was so red-pilled. Like I still think the government can do some good in a lot of areas, but I just, in every way, I feel their power needs to be limited, right?
Yep.
And COVID happened, and I was just finished a ski season, and so I wasn't entitled to any money during COVID from the British government, nor the Austrian government. Even when I went out to Austria after they told me during the second lockdown, winter lockdown, that the thing was going to open, I flew out, arrived, and then they decided, oh, just another week. Then they were like, oh yeah, we'll do takeaway. We'll let you have your bar outside. And I was like, okay, fuck it. I can deal with that. I'll do anything. I'll wear 6 coats and stand in minus 20. Fine. I needed the money. And then the day before they were like, actually, no, you can't do that. But like the entire time I was like, it was the first time in my life I had ever been unable to get a job and make some money.
Yep.
Because normally I always went hospitality. I've done restaurants since I was 15, bars, and like I've never been unable to get a job. I lived in Canada for a year, made basically zero money as a writer, but I was still able to go and do some hospitality work, keep the bills being paid. Yep. During COVID, everything's shut. And I was just like, hang on.
Yep.
Like, and when that happened, I was just like, I will never be in this position again. I will never allow myself, I will never allow myself to be at the mercy of the government.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how no one else, or well, not no one else, but how the entire country hasn't had this realization that they fucked us. And I
think more people have had that realization than you would think. And I think it's because of now, what we're going through now, the blowback. And even as much as the government is trying to blame prices rising and the energy crisis on Putin, it's like, well, they were rising before the invasion. The threat of inflation was mentioned if you shut the economy down or effectively crash your economy against a brick wall, right? All of these conversations were had many times and many places over. The effects of putting your country in your economy in a coma, and an artificial coma has consequences, right? We said these things and no one listened to us. And even Rishi Sunak came out and said, there was no debate around COVID policy, and that's what I would never want to reenact. And I just thought, you motherfucker, why didn't you say anything at the time? Oh, that's right. You were borrowing $500 billion pounds to effectively
to all of their mates and donors.
Pay people who signed an employment contract to stay at home and watch Netflix. Not people who were self-employed. Not people who had businesses to run. You had family businesses that had been running for 20 years that effectively shut overnight. In the space of 2 weeks, you had someone's legacy destroyed because of this COVID, and there was no conversation about it. If you didn't want to stay home, you were a COVID denier, you wanted to kill granny, but then you saw those BLM activists, those twats outside gathering in the tens of thousands for something that didn't even happen on British soil, yelling, don't shoot at police, and putting all of our lives at risk. Even though at the time, more Black and ethnic minority people were more likely to get seriously ill from COVID than other groups in this country. I mean, it was just infuriating. But this is the thing. This is why I said I've always been very kind of independent minded in the sense that I just want the government to leave me alone and do the bare minimum, protect us from each other, law and order, diplomacy, that sort of thing. Don't come and shell in the agenda by these globalists or these WF agents. None of that. I just want to be able to thrive and to be left alone. But you have people that even I think COVID made them realize more, but there's still people that just simply don't get it because it's a crisis of identity, right? I think part of the reason that I have always felt the way that I have felt about the government and limiting government power is because I'm very rooted in something. I have a very strong cultural identity. I'm Ghanaian. I was raised in the Anglican church. I'm naturally very socially conservative, even though I tend to be more centrist on certain policies. I don't have a crisis of identity. I know that if anything happens, I can go to my relatives. I have family. I plan on having my own family, so I don't fear for my future being insecure. I know that if me and my brother wanted to buy a house, me and my family will try and pool resources. We'll try and live in the family house longer. And this is the thing. You see this with a lot of ethnic minority communities in this country. So I don't really have a sense of identity. So I don't feel the need to rely on the government. But you have people and they think, oh, I don't want to be religious. I don't want to be fine. But again, there is a crisis of identity. And we're not talking just on an individual level, because individually we all differ to some extent. We're talking about a national level, on a societal level. That feeling of lack of rootedness really does have real world implications. That's why people don't see the point of having kids or family, or, taking care of your relatives when you're older. I have some harrowing stories about when I worked in the care home, but there was one example of a lady who, I went to clean her flat and it looked like a bomb site. And I asked my manager what the hell happened. And she was like, she was so depressed, the NHS took her to a public hospital and then a public care home. And I was like, do you know how depressed you have to be for the NHS to take notice? You have to be not eating, losing weight, effectively losing your cognitive abilities, because you're just living a life of complete, utter meaninglessness. And I said, what happened to her family? Why haven't they collected her stuff? Because she'd been out of that place for 7 months. And they were like, they don't want to know. Right? And I'm like, she has kids? It's like, yeah, they do not want to know. Right? And, if you grew up in a traditional family, if you grew up with certain cultural ideals, your parents are effectively your responsibility, in the same way that your children are a responsibility. Hand go, hand come. You take care of each other. You have a solid family unit, right? And that has all broken up now because people are so atomized that they believe, well, she didn't have to have me, or she shouldn't have done this. And I'm not saying that the kids are necessarily at fault, because I don't know, maybe their mom was a raging, abusive bitch. But I'm just saying that the social fabric that keeps society together is completely broken. People don't have a sense of identity. And that is why there is this crutch on being so attached to the government. And I think what I'm noticing, especially in the US, is there's a move away from that, where people are saying, okay, COVID made me wake up. You're trying to take away my guns and now you're telling me I can't work. Well, I have an issue here. And so we have people that are not necessarily, you don't see them and think right wing, that are leaning right? Because they're seeing the value of that. They're seeing the value of being a part of a community, and not necessarily going down the religious route. But I do think there is a place, there's a God-shaped hole in society. And I think that the crisis is more acute in the UK, because the Church of England is effectively a lame duck. It doesn't mean anything. It's symbolic.
That's a joke.
It symbolized the decline of really Britain, because the Church of England rose at the peak of the empire. It was the strongest. It was such a huge cultural institution. And as Britain has declined, so has the Church of England and its influence. And you actually have a lot of Church of England clergymen and members moving to the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church is still really rooted in a very strong sense of identity and tradition. And I don't say this to kind of preach to people, but I say this to wake people up. And if you ever feel like you lack meaning or sense of purpose, or you really want to understand aspects of life, or the meaning of life outside of what is just at your fingertips, of what you physically see, or like something that's spiritual or has a more philosophical, faith-based approach, don't take that lightly, right? Your soul means something. Everyone has a soul and it means something. And you have to wake up with a sense of purpose and with a sense of identity every single day, to get out into the world and say, come what may, I will get something done and I will be a positive influence. And people don't have that approach. That we now have this sort of cult-like movements in the LGBT kind of genderqueer space. And then we have it with kind of this obsession, left-wing socialist kind of groups that believe that the government is the solution to all their problems. And then you have, even on the right, you have really sort of white nationalists and all these crazy kind of identitarian groups. They're all mini cults, and they've broken up because society has lost its way and it's lost its sense of identity. The Queen dying was a huge blow to society. She wasn't a religious figure, but she represented something.
I don't know. I would argue she's a quasi-religious figure.
Well, yeah. I would argue the NHS is more quasi-religious than the Queen, but I do think she represented something very deep and meaningful to this country. And when I say these things, I don't say it because, I don't say it particularly to myself. I'm good. I'm very solid. I'm very happy. My outside life, outside of what I do with my career and with technology and social media and all that, is very solid. I have a very close relationship with my family. I have goals, and I'm, the kind of people I keep around me, we're very similar in our approach to life. I don't say that for myself. I'm not worried there. I say this because I really want people to take that seriously, because I can't imagine what the French have this saying called dans le flou, which is like just kind of this floating existence, or something that's just floating. I can't imagine what that feels like, because then you become more reckless. You find it easier to jettison the established wisdom of the past. I've had old people telling me they're scared of young people now, because they're just like, back in the day, you would greet your elders. Yeah. Right? You would treat them with respect. You would think that someone who's lived on this planet for 60, 70 years knows something you may not know, you snot-nosed brat at 15. right? But then you have
boomer.
Yeah,
Like,
no, but it's true.
That's the response.
But it's true. And then you have all these like fetuses online, these young adults with a bloody keyboard, and they're getting mouthy. And I just think, where has society gone? So yeah, I do think the helplessness is a much deeper philosophical issue, and this crisis of identity that we're having in the UK.
I want to come back to the God-shaped hole in society, definitely, in a minute. But I do want to ask, like, because I see this brand of person that exists in the world.
Yeah.
And they think the Tories are fascists.
Yeah, okay.
They want the government to take everything over. They think Brexit is the source of all evil.
Yep.
But primarily, they call the government fascists and authoritarians, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of them in the Tory or Conservative Party are wannabe authoritarians.
Yeah.
Right? I don't disagree with them.
That exists in virtually almost every politician.
But yeah, I mean, this probably exists in almost every single person, if we're going to be honest.
No, I agree with that.
But I watched them complain about like the protest bill recently, and I watched them talk about like just anything that the Tories do. Like, I mean, they've done some horrendous, obscene things that like are horrible, like horribly antithetical to the thing that we're meant to stand for in Britain. Like the online harms bill, like loads of stuff they can point to. But when it came to the COVID policies, they said fucking nothing.
Yep.
They were fine with these fascists. Still wearing masks. The people they are calling fascists, like this, like I cannot get my fucking head around this. Yep. I want to slap them and be like, explain yourself. But like they wanted the fascists to have unlimited power. Mm-hmm. They wanted the fascists to have unlimited power. What?
But look at it this way. Do you think those people would have the views that they had if they came from a 2-parent home where they felt like they were rooted in a society that had something to offer them, that felt like they had a strong sense of national identity, that the country they were in mattered and was fundamentally a force for good?
Yes. I witnessed it in Austria. Austria satisfies all of those criteria, and we're more pro-lockdown.
Hold on. So those are the 3 criteria. But also these people had a sense of continuity in society. So they felt like, okay, what's society going to look like for future generations, for my children, right? How am I, if there were people that had to go out and outside the M25 bubble where they don't have the option of being able to work from home, right? They're actual plumbers or they work in construction and they have to go out and physically work, right? And they have to earn a living. Do you think, but this is the thing, once you stratify the kind of people that you're talking about here, which I completely agree with, left-wing champagne socialists, then you understand. I mean, I've had a bunch of odd jobs in my life, and I say, if you really want to pulse of this country and where this country is going, look at the construction industry, because it's predominantly male, it's predominantly people that are using their hands, and it's predominantly an industry that aspects of it really do need technological change, but it's also dying, right? And I genuinely believe that. And so you have these people ticking along. But a lot of people that don't have the option to stay at home, work from home, right? Have internet access and all of these glossy things. They completely disagreed with the Conservative Party. And a good chunk of that, their party policy during the COVID, or a good chunk of that were actually traditional heartland Labour voters. That's what makes the difference. So I think, really, I think even the way we talk about politics now is insufficient, because I don't think it actually accounts for the real stratifications in society. The traditional left-right divide no longer applies in the same way that it does. You don't have coal miners and like you did in the sort of 50s and 60s, right? You have a completely different generation. Now a lot of people that I see that are left-wing are a bunch of brats raised in middle-class families that don't understand what it is to work hard. And they're like, oh, but Esther, why are you like that? Guess what? I grew up in Ghana. Right? I've seen what real poverty looks like. I'm always thinking, how can I prosper as a person? Because I have people to take care of back home, right? I'm rooted in something where I know that other people depend on me. I didn't just, go live in a house, 3 bedrooms, go to a grammar school, go to university, but learn that the Tories are all evil and now feel like I have all the solutions to the world. Meanwhile, you're a tattered blue...
I feel very personally attacked right now. Like...
Well, no, not you. But the thing is, and the thing is as well, the same people are never able to analyze their lives critically, because all of them think that they have the solution to the world. They
That was definitely me at 21.
But you know what I mean? Yeah. Exactly. But it's like, do not judge for the same measure that you judge, with the measure you judge, the same measure shall be put to you. Or how dare you remove the speck from someone's eye when there's a log in yours? A lot of these people don't have the ability to look at their lives critically and to be able to put things in check. I'm very, very hard on myself to the point that sometimes I feel like I need therapy for it. Not because I'm crazy, but because I feel a responsibility that if I want to see things get better, this starts with me. All of these people that said, get the 15th jab, be locked down, you shouldn't be able to go out and work. How many of them were overweight? How many of them were smokers? How many of them had mental health issues that they were racked up with antidepressants day in and day out?
Hey everyone, thanks for making it right the way to the end of the podcast. I love that you tuned in this long. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, because 80% of you bastards are not subscribing, but you're watching my videos. See you next time.